way I said, let me do something quick. Let me do something easy after my history of EXO, and then I made this. It's fine, we're here, let's get into it. I would actually like to start things with a question. If I were to ask you the viewer, to name the 3 biggest 4th generation boy groups, I want to know who you'd name. For me, the first 2 have always been easy, right? Like, I'd name Tux, I'd name Stray Kids. The 3rd spot has always been one that, like, I can't nail down. I feel like, hear me out, I have logic behind this actually, we're already on a tangent. NCT Dream, I feel like, is the 3rd biggest 4th gen boy group, but you're not ready to have that conversation. However, if we want to talk the legal definition of 4th gen boy group, I've never been able to nail down a 3rd, and I think that's so interesting because I constantly see people online, like on Twitter, they'll be like, oh, Enhypen is the 3rd of the big 3 of 4th gen. And I've always seen that. I've been like, no, I disagree. However, having now made this behemoth, I can state with certainty that I was wrong, and Enhypen absolutely are the 3rd biggest 4th gen boy group by legal definition of 4th gen. And I am so excited to take you all on the journey of my discovery, but first, we have to do some shout-outs. Like, I have to give credit where credit is due. First is, of course, Miss Smokey Kuo. I don't know what she's up to. I might have to start taking her out of these because she's disappeared from the face of the earth again. However, she is my original inspiration for making these videos. I know, I say this every time, I know the concept of like a deep dive is like YouTube 101 in the modern day, right? Like, all YouTubers are making these sort of deep dive videos, and I get that. However, she used to make these evolution of videos that I loved and were my original inspiration for when I started making these deep dives. So granted, they've morphed. My videos have morphed. We no longer make, well, we never made similar content, but like, they've morphed. Either way, I will put her channel and her evolution of playlist in the description. I love them all. She dives into YouTubers and makeup companies. They're really interesting. Now for the bestie. I need to think about what I want to say about the bestie. I feel like I gave her like a very heartfelt shout out in the last video, and now she does not care about Enhypen. Like, not even a little bit. At least with EXO, like, she cared at a time. She was not crazy like me in the modern day, but she cared at a time. She does not care about Enhypen. Not even remotely. She only watched Island with me for team purposes. And here's the thing. I did still annoy her, right? Like, I'm annoying when I make these. I know I feel like I say that every time as well. I'm so annoying when I make these videos. I'm a sharer. And I'm a learner. I love to learn lore, and then I love to share the lore that I've learned. It's why this channel is probably really good for my psyche, because now I can sit here for hours at a time and tell you all the lore that I know and the lore that I've learned. But either way, I did still annoy her. Yeah, I annoyed her. She also is the one who told me to make these slideshows, for what it's worth. She is smarter than me. I feel like this was a much less heartfelt shout out, but in my defense, Enhypen is not a group that she even remotely cares about. Lastly, my lovely little Bean, light of my life, light of my Thursdays. What do I want to say about Bean today? Bean, I love you so much. Thank you for letting me scream the other day. You'll know what day I'm filming this on when I say that. Thank you for letting me scream the other day. Bean is the reason I can make these long videos. That's why she gets a shout out. Mainly, she also is my most devoted fan. That girl does not care even a little bit about K-pop, and yet she supports me unconditionally. She made a whole YouTube account just to comment on my videos and give me hype. Like, I love her so bad. Okay, final thing before we can truly begin is my disclaimer slide. None of them are scary. You can look at them all right now. None of them are scary. I'm gonna cover my bases. I don't trust anyone to be normal anymore. Okay, I feel like in recent times, normalcy has become a rarity, and I don't trust anyone to be normal, so I'm covering my bases. Okay, first one is gonna sound mean. I'm not an engine. I am not an Enhypen stan, okay? I feel like my last 5 or 6 years history of, really all of them since my Zika one, have been for groups that I love, groups that I can and have gone crazy about. Enhypen is not one of those groups. I don't dislike Enhypen. I'm fascinated by Enhypen. My love for Enhypen isn't really a love. It's more an intellectual fascination with them. I want to understand so much more about the Enhypen lore and the Enhypen cinematic universe in the way that I perceive it. And that's why I wanted to do Enhypen, right? Like, I'm not sitting here to talk about Enhypen because I want to go on a tirade about their music. They have some songs that I will go on tirades about. There's many an Enhypen song that I love. But I don't feel as strongly about my favorite Enhypen song as I do feel about my, like, 10th most favorite EXO song, right? Like, my least favorite BAP song is gonna have me more feral than my favorite Enhypen song. And we all need to be okay with that. Disclaimer number 2. This video involves HYBE Entertainment. We hate HYBE Entertainment in this house. Actually, I don't even think they're HYBE Entertainment. I think they're like HYBE Corporation. We hate HYBE. We hate HYBE, whatever the second word of their company name is. I obviously haven't filmed this yet, but there is like a 50-50 chance I'm gonna wish death on someone over the course of this video. That's someone being like a HYBE executive or Bang Ji-hyuk himself. HYBE truly, I know I've threatened to do this for literally like a year now. One of these days I'm gonna sit here and I am gonna make a video that is just the crimes of HYBE. All of the things they've done to make K-pop worse. Because I do believe HYBE is the worst thing to happen to K-pop, potentially in my lifetime, and certainly in my lifetime as a K-pop fan. Like, they have truly made this genre exponentially worse. Disclaimer number 3, I am not covering everything. I'm not covering every Enhypen activity, in part because I don't care about some of it, and in part because it's not important, right? Like, this is not meant to be every single variety show Enhypen appeared on. Every single thing they ever did over the course of their career. That's not what this video is. Go find their schedule and read through it if that's what you want. This video is supposed to be for the important things. It's supposed to be for the timeline. And that's what I'm focusing on. I feel like without fail, I was going to say every time. It's happened like twice, where I'll make this disclaimer. I make this disclaimer in every single one of these videos. And I've gotten comments being like, you missed this thing. You missed this minute thing. And I'm like, listen, you can't get mad at me because you didn't heed my disclaimers. Final disclaimer, opinions will be shared at times. As previously stated, there are many Enhypen songs that I love, and I will be hyping those up. However, there are some Enhypen songs that I hate, and if you're not emotionally prepared for me to call Future Perfect a crime against music, you should leave now. I'd recommend it. Alrighty, that covers that. It is now member time. It is time to meet the various members of Enhypen, and as always, to pretend we're normal and unbiased, I'm going in age order. Which means, first up, we have the one and only Enhypen. He was born on October 15th, 2001. Also, to be clear, Enhypen, like Tuxt, does not have official positions listed, like, publicly. People say he sings the main vocal, sure. I don't know, right? Like, at least with Tuxt, there was a widely agreed upon consensus for most of the Tuxt positions when I made my history of Tuxt. Enhypen does not have that widely agreed upon consensus. I do actually have a theory, which is simply that HYBE, how do I want to put this in a way that isn't going to get me doxxed and murdered in the streets? HYBE idols are not known for their strong vocals, right? Like, specifically male idols from HYBE, and I do think it is a concerted effort and an intentional decision not to have positions, specifically not to have the position of a main vocal, because if you have a main vocal, people can point to your main vocal and say, this is your main vocal, whereas if you do not have a main vocal, no one can say that. No one has one person they can hone in on and be like, this bitch cannot sing. Why are they the main vocal? That is my theory. That is my crack theory. I actually do stand by it. I do think it is a real thing. I think that if I were to hack into the HYBE servers and look at the documents, specifically for Tuxt's debut, they would intentionally say, we are not going to have positions, right? In spite of the fact that everyone knows Taehyun is the main vocal of Tuxt, and Taehyun is a good singer, I think it was an intentional choice that Enhypen and Tuxt and other HYBE artists do not have officially listed positions. The way I went on that whole ramble, I did not have that in my notes whatsoever. That is just something that I decided to share with you all. Anyway, let's have some fun facts. First and foremost, he's friends with Bumgyu of Tuxt. He did train with Tuxt back in the day, so like it makes sense, but he is friends with Bumgyu specifically. They've listed each other as being good friends, so good for him. Also, he says his role model is his father. Maybe it's my latent daddy issues. I think that's really sweet. Oh god, okay. Next is Jay. aka Park Jong-sung, but he's Jay. He was born on April 20th, 2002, and is from here. Like, the broad sense of here. He's from Seattle. He's a Seattle baby. He, I believe, actually grew up in Federal Way. I should know that. Is it Jay Park that I'm thinking of that grew up in Federal Way? I don't know. I don't know. No, now I'm crashing out. I feel like I need to confirm this. Either way, he's from Seattle, like the broad area of Seattle. He posted a picture one time of like where he did martial arts, and I immediately was like, I know that place. There's a Pizza Hut across the street. Update. I checked some profiles just like on the internet. No one said specifically he grew up in Federal Way of the ones that I looked at. However, I swear to God, when he performed at the Tacoma Dome, like with the rest of Enhypen, he said he grew up in Federal Way. I don't care. He's from this broad region. Let's have other J fun facts now. First and foremost, he wanted to be a chef as a child, and even in the modern day, he does like to cook. Good for him. I want to know what his favorite dish to make is now. I didn't look it up. I'm sure it's readily available information. I want to know. I want him to tell me. Anyway, other fun fact, he is named after a Mariners player. This is him in Mariners attire. He's named after a Mariners player. That is unfortunately the most Seattle thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Like, you could tell me that one fact about someone, you'd be like, they were named for a Mariners player, and I'd be like, that's the most Seattle thing I've ever heard. Okay, on to our Aussie King, or at least my Aussie King. Jake, aka Shin Jaeun, but he's Jake. He was born on November 15th, 2002, and is unfortunately someone I have a great affinity for. That sounds really mean, but I do kind of stand by it. Jake, to me, is my, like, embarrassing fave, in a way. I feel like everyone needs that, like, one fave they have that they're like, I don't know why I like you, but I do, and that's me with Jake. I don't know what it is about Jake. My current theorem is just that he reminds me of, like, a past version of me. Like, a lot of the traits I see from him are things that, like, I would do maybe 5 years ago. Right? Like, for example, he's a math girly. He likes math. I loved math, and it was, like, a weirdly big part of my personality, like, 7 years ago when I was a teenager. So, like, that's what I mean when I say, like, Jake reminds me of a past version of me, and unfortunately it does endear him to me. Other Jake fun facts, he's a dog lover, both same and also the correct stance. The absolute correct stance. He's also friends with the Australian members of Stray Kids. Good for him. And he can play the violin, which I find impressive. Our next member is the one and only Park Sung, who was born on December 8th, 2002. Someone has arguably some of the wildest lore for any K-pop idol ever. He was a figure skater as a child. He actually was good too. Like, he won medals over the years. He quit at some point, obviously. He's no longer a professional figure skater, but, like, I do sometimes think about it. I'm like, Sunghoon was a figure skater. Other fun facts for this man include being friends with Cha Junman. We will be circling back to this man. They did a collaboration stage at the 2022 SBS Galas, and Lord knows we'll be discussing it. We will need to discuss it. We'll come back to them. We'll come back to them when they look like people and not small, smushy children. So, you know what? Good for him. Other fun facts include, he said his favorite season is autumn, which is apt because that is the name of his dog. Everyone, shut the fuck up. It's time to talk about Sunwoo. Kim Sunwoo was born on July 24th, 2003, and is my little icon. Okay, he's a legend. If you're mean to him, I will track you down and I will beat you with a spiky bat. Yes, I know this threat does mean I will be brawling in the streets with, like, half of Enhypen. I don't care. I will slit someone's throat with Sunghoon's old figure skating skate, and then I'll choke you out with my bare hands. Like, Sunwoo, I am the first line of your protection squad, and I will be until my death. I really hope it doesn't come out in, like, 5 years that he's an awful person, because I have said similar things about other idols who have been proven to not be good people. So, we're just gonna have to hope for the best and hope I don't have to delete this. Anyway, let's have some fun facts now. First and foremost, he was student council president. Like the little king that he is, it's iconic and I love that for him. He also likes rainbow sherbet, an ice cream flavor I have not thought about in years. I'm now craving it. I've been craving it since I learned this information. Since I learned that he's a rainbow sherbet stan, I've been craving it. I don't know where to get it. Every Baskin-Robbins near me has closed, and that's the only place I used to get it as a child. And I don't want to get it anywhere else, so I'm just going to have to suffer. Anyway, last thing. He is our selfie king. He has said in the past that he takes like 50 selfies a day, and I just know. I know in my spirit they are either the best picture you've ever seen, or the most horrifying, like blurry ass terrible image, and there is no in between in quality. Okay, next is our short king, Mr. Yang Jungwon, who was born on February 9, 2004, and is a rare member with an officially listed position. He is our leader. I do actually think it's kind of funny. I call him a short king. He's like 5'7". He's like roughly my height. I just remember that when I saw Enhypen live, he was really easy to spot because he was shorter than everyone else. Ergo, he's a short king. Enough about Jungwon's height. Let's have some fun facts for him. First, he is a snorer. Apparently, this is actually a touchy subject for me. I recently discovered I snore now. I learned this like 2 months ago, and since had it confirmed when I went to Disney with a friend. So it's a touchy subject for me. I live a hard life. Back to Jungwon. He also was an SM trainee. He apparently trained with HYBE. I do have many a follow-up question about this, but we're gonna save those for another time. And last but not least, Nikki, who was born on December 9, 2005 and serves as our maknae. And yes, December 9, 2005 does mean he was 14 when he debuted. Sometimes I think about that tweet that got tweeted out when Kiki debuted, and it was like normal age, mandatory 14-year-old. Like, I get that he's a great dancer, and he is a great dancer. Why did we need an 8th grader in the group? Also, he was nominated for whatever company it is that does like the most handsome faces in K-pop type thing. He was nominated in 2020 when he was 14. This is what he looked like in 2020 when he was 14. Who nominated him? I need to have a chat with whoever nominated him because he looks really fucking young. Anyway, Nikki's another member with some fun pre-debut lore, which is that he was wilding in Japan. He was wilding the fuck out in Japan. He's from Japan. I don't think I mentioned that. He's from Japan. And he was wilding the fuck out. He was a backup dancer for SHINee at one point. Like, do you understand what I would give to know the lore of what it's like to be a backup dancer for SHINee? Nikki fun facts include being friends with Taki from Anteam. This is not a history of Anteam. However, I do need to know that's my boy. That's my son. If he likes Nikki, I like Nikki. That's all it takes. Like, I trust Taki's opinion on Nikki enough that I'm just like, yes, you are correct. That's a good boy. So, like, there's that. He also can play the piano, which we do love to see. I am kind of a slut for piano. I've said this many a time, but, like, it has a weird effect on my brain. I love the piano. And with that, we've officially hit all the members of Enhypen, which means we can now begin the timeline of Enhypen. Okay, so the tale of Enhypen begins in May of 2020 when we got our first teasers for Island, a collaboration show between Mnet and HYBE that would produce the label's next boy group. Now, I'm not going to give you an episode-by-episode breakdown of Island, mainly because I don't want to watch it again. That was an emotionally trying experience for me, and especially for these boys. Like, there's a reason why none of them want to talk about it. I've seen some fucked up shit go down on these various K-pop survival boy group producing shows. I've seen them do what I can only describe as insane things. This show was borderline psychological warfare. Like, I've literally seen people call it psychological warfare. This show was fucked up. There is a reason none of them talk about what went down in that damn building. Traumas aside, this show was quite successful. For starters, it was an Mnet show that produced a group. Those technically tend to do well. Look at Produce, look at the various planets. Those shows do well, so there's that in play. You also then take into account the fact that it was producing a HYBE boy group. That added even more hype. And then to top it all off, they got IU to sing the opening theme song. I would like to repeat that sentence. They got IU, the biggest artist in Korea, to sing the opening theme song. I'm still frankly not sure how they swung that. On the topic of that opening song though, it's a banger. I kind of forget about it all the time. It's actually really good. I actually really like it. I do think they fucked over every single trainee by making IU sing it and then having them try and compete with IU vocals, but also it's fine. I can and do just stream the IU version. We're getting distracted. I started thinking about IU. I need to refocus. Back to Enhypen. So, Island. Island would begin on June 26th. That's when the first episode came out, and episodes would come out weekly until September 18th when the finale would air, and we would get the Enhypen we know, and depending on the member I'm discussing, love. Following the end of Island, we would get debut preparations as well as the release of Enhypen and HYBE, a 4-episode mini-series that sort of showed the groups preparing for their debut. And then, at long last, on November 30th, we would get Border Day 1, Enhypen's debut mini album along with its lead single, Given Taken. And right off the bat, this album sold insanely well. In its first month, it sold 380,000 copies. Its first month. It would also peak at number 2 on the GON charts, just behind the NCT Resonance Part 2 album, and closed out 2020 as the best-selling album by a rookie artist. The thing about Enhypen, though, that is different than a lot of artists is, specifically with their older albums would continue to sell well for years after they came out. Like, this album sold 380,000 copies in its first month, and that's all well and good, but in the modern day, this album has sold more than 775,000 copies in Korea. That 775,000 already makes this one of the best-selling debut albums from a K-pop artist. However, we're not done talking about it. There's also Japanese sales to talk about. Enhypen throughout their career have had really strong sales in Japan, and that does begin with this album, where this album sold more than 120,000 copies, earning a gold certification and peaking at number 2 on the Japanese charts, bringing the cumulative sales for this thing up to around 900,000 copies. Insane work for your debut album. I want us to take a brief aside before I talk about the title track, okay? I want to talk about Enhypen's hits and what I refer to as a hit for Enhypen. Now, before I even begin this video, I want to note, Enhypen has never had a hit single in Korea specifically. They do not chart well. There are a lot of groups like this where they do not chart well, but internationally over on YouTube and over on Spotify, they will get extremely strong numbers. Enhypen is one of those groups. Enhypen is a group where they will have a song with 300 million streams that did not chart anywhere. And that's normal for them, right? That's not out of the realm of possibility. They are not strong charters. And that does also begin from day one. Yeah, Given Taken did not appear on the GON or Melon charts. Now, here's my thing with this. I think about this from 2 schools of thought. The first school of thought is simply the fact that 4th gen boy groups in particular did not chart well. Like, even the biggest 4th gen boy groups do not chart well. Even like Stray Kids. Stray Kids is not a strong digital charter. Tooks is not a strong digital charter. Boy groups from 4th generation K-pop just are not strong digital charters. So it is not a surprise to me that Enhypen did not chart with their debut from that side of things. However, then there's the side of things that they are a HYBE group and an Mnet survival group. Both of those categories do chart. X1 charted with their debut. Tooks charted with their debut. So Enhypen not charting with their debut is both normal and concerning depending on how you want to look at it. That said, as we've established, Enhypen's strong suit has always been more international numbers, Spotify and YouTube, and that also starts from day one. This song has 220 million streams over on Spotify, making it one of the most streamed K-pop debut songs on Spotify. YouTube numbers are weaker. In my research, in my time, I established that Spotify numbers are always going to be stronger than YouTube numbers, and YouTube numbers vary from strength, but 85 million views, which is what the debut music video got. 85 million views is a very good number based off what I can understand. I feel like, I said this before, I feel like I've lost my understanding of what is good on K-pop YouTube in the modern day, because in my mind, I'm like, these songs are not getting like 100 million streams on Spotify. So I would imagine they get like 100 million views on YouTube, and then I'd look, and it's like you have 200 million streams on Spotify and 85 million views on... I just feel like I've lost my understanding of it, and I feel like I need to do my own personal deep dive into what good numbers are on YouTube, but from my understanding, because I do remember 2020 numbers, 85 million is very good for your first ever release. And then there's the song itself. Given Taken is actually a really cool song. I've had to think about this in the making of this video because Enhypen has gone on to make much more just like classic K-pop boy group music, and also especially at the time in 2020, that was the era of the loud music. That's when Stray Kids and NCT 127 were like really popping off with this louder sound that was kind of just noise and not very good if you ask me. Enhypen took arguably the complete opposite end of the spectrum. Given Taken is a lot more toned down, it's a lot more low-key, but it also still fucks. Like, it's honestly a really cool debut as I look at it now from 2025. But not only is the title good, this whole album is honestly pretty great. Like, every single song on here is considered an Enhypen classic, and I think it's considered that for a reason. They're all really good. Flicker is sort of this precursor to Fever, which we will get to, but it works. It's in a good way. It's chill, and it's sexy in a way that it shouldn't be from a group of teenagers. And then there's also Let Me In, a song we will be circling back to. However, my golden B-side, our first golden B-side is gonna go to 10 months. For the unaware who didn't watch any of my other history albums, my golden B-side is my favorite B-side on the album. Notice I said favorite. I do not have to think it's the best. I think it's my favorite. And that is going to go to 10 months. I was reading reviews for this album, like, back when it came out, and a lot of people didn't like this song, or at least thought it was the worst song on the album. Crazy take. Insane take. Could not be me. This song is so fun. It's so cute. It's so poppy. Do I think it's this, like, a great piece of music that you need to hear? No. But I do still think it's a fun time, and I don't think it's the worst song on the album. Also, while we're here, to be clear, almost every Enhypen album will begin and end with a spoken moment, a spoken intro and a spoken outro. They do typically have pretty good music. I will never be engaging with these, like in this video. There's a very real chance I will never bring them up again. And when I stream Enhypen's music, I almost always skip them. So if you really like the spoken intro on like the Carnival album, I'm so sorry, you will not be hearing me talk about it. But remember how I said we'd be back to Let Me In? Let's get back to Let Me In, because in December, following promotions for Give and Taken, Enhypen would release a music video for Let Me In as a sort of follow-up single. And in spite of not getting really any promotions, this song did pretty great when you think about it. Like, the music video has more than 50 million views, the song has more than 90 million streams on Spotify. If you compare those numbers to Give and Taken, the mainline title of this album, that's really good for your unpromoted follow-up single. And that's it for 2020. So why don't we take a little break? Let's have a little retrospective, if you will. Alrighty, welcome to the retrospective corner. Yes, this is my normal corner. It's the retrospective corner in these videos. Now, for those who are new, who haven't seen my history of, I like to end every single year with just a little retrospective, a little touch point to check in. And the theme for 2020 is mainly potential, more than anything else. Like, Enhypen was one of the biggest debuts of the entire year, along with aespa and Treasure, and people were just really excited to see what this group was gonna do next. And the sky was truly the limit, so why don't we move into 2021 and discuss? Okay, 2021, the first full year of Enhypen, and we do actually begin with them just wrapping up promotions for their debut album, so we are gonna fast forward just a little bit. So, jumping ahead to February, we would get Playground, a quickie little mini-series collaboration between Enhypen and Tux, something I'm actually kind of surprised HYBE doesn't do more. I feel like the two of them should collaborate on things like this more, whatever. I did watch it when it came out, and I do remember being actively annoyed at Enhypen's presence here, and I'll concede, I'm a hater. At least I was at the time. I should not have been that mean. Like, Enhypen should not have been pissing me off in the way. It's just that I didn't care. Like, I was not an Enhypen fan, even remotely at the time, and I was a huge Tux stan, so I was just kind of pissed that there were people here who were not members of Tux. I'll concede, I was a hater. I was wrong in this one particular instance of hating. Then, in March, we would get the second season of Enhypen and HYBE. It would also run for 4 episodes from March through April, and oh so conveniently, it was timed just so well with the announcement of the new Enhypen album that will be coming out at the end of that month. And sure enough, on April 26th, we would get Border Carnival, Enhypen's second mini-album, along with its lead single, Drunk Dazed. And right off the bat, this comeback did insanely well, with Drunk Dazed blowing Give and Taken out of the water in every single way. First, domestically, Drunk Dazed would be the first Enhypen release to appear on the Gaon digital charts. It wasn't crazy, peaked at number 118, but that is progress compared to their debut, which did not appear in the top 200. Plus, Drunk Dazed would earn Enhypen their very first music show win, with a win on the show on May 4th, as well as earning a total of 3 wins, including their first win on Music Bank. However, as we've established, Enhypen's strong suit is their international numbers. And sure enough, this music video got 150 million views, nearly double what their debut music video had gotten. And then there's Spotify. Drunk Dazed has 350 million streams on Spotify. An insane number, and making it one of the most streamed songs from a K-pop group on Spotify from 2021. Then there's Drunk Dazed as a song. I said this when I reviewed this album. I used to hate this song. And that was another instance, I will concede, of me being an unnecessary hater. I do stand by, this song is worse than Given Taken. I remember, one thing that I really liked about Given Taken was that it wasn't your typical boy group affair. Drunk Dazed kind of is, but also I will concede, it's a fun song. Like, I was definitely right when I said it was a downgrade, but I was wrong when I said it was a bad song. It's not a bad song, it's a good song. But enough about Drunk Dazed. We need to talk about this album, because this thing did numbers. This album would debut at #1 on the GOM charts, earning Enhypen their first chart topper, as well as selling 500,000 copies in the first. Carnival has gone on to sell well, just like their debut. Its current sales sit at over 1 million, having cleared the million mark back in July of 2024, becoming the oldest Enhypen album to hit that million sale threshold. Also, just like Enhypen's debut, this album did great in Japan. It would also earn the group their first #1 album over their topping charts, and becoming the second Enhypen release to earn a gold certification. Okay, now let's talk B-sides. This is another pretty great album to me. Like, you have not the same level of songs as on their debut. I think their debut album is a stronger album, but you do have good songs on here. Like, you have Mixed Up, which is this really interesting mix of rock and hip-hop, but it works really well. However, if I had to pick a golden B-side, which I do, legally speaking, I would have to give it to Not For Sale. I'm so almost obsessed with that chorus. I just don't know how I heard it for the first time and wasn't completely enthralled and wasn't like ride or die for that chorus. It's so chill, but with this like fun tropical vibe. In the modern day, 2025 Simon, I adore that chorus. However, you may have noticed I said I had to, legally speaking, pick Not For Sale. And that is because my favorite song on this album is Fever, which was released as the follow-up single with the music video coming out on May 19th. And Fever was huge, and I mean huge, huge. By the end of 2021, it had already cleared 100 million streams. For a frame of reference, Next Level by aespa, released like a month later, and one of the biggest hits of 2021, it had less streams than Fever did by the end of the year. It also still has less streams than Fever. Fever has roughly 400 million streams on Spotify. It is, to this day, the most streamed Enhypen song, beating out the mainline title of the album, beating out every other mainline title that Enhypen has put out, beating out almost every single 2021 K-pop release. Fever is one of the biggest things Enhypen has ever put out. And the thing is, Fever deserves all of this and more, okay? Enhypen had good songs on their debut. Fever, however, is their first great song. Fever is the song that I heard it and I was like, I need to pay attention to this group. There's a reason why I heard it and I was like, I need to pay attention to Enhypen. Because this song is cunty, it's sexy. There's a reason I lose my mind to it to this day. I've heard this song hundreds of times and it still gets me. That does wrap up everything that I wanted to say about Border Carnival from like a lore stance, but I feel like I sort of need to reiterate what this album did for Enhypen specifically. Enhypen was popular when they debuted, but they were not massive when they debuted. They were essentially just a boy group that had good album sales. There's a lot of boy groups out there where I could say that exact sentence, and that perfectly encapsulates everything about them. Like, they're just a boy group that gets good album sales. This album, first of all, it got insane album sales, which definitely helped, but more importantly, it got them hits. Enhypen, granted, they were not domestic hits, but Enhypen had two of the biggest international hits in 2021 with Fever and with Drunk Dazed. And this album is really the thing that put them on the map and made them one of the frontrunners of fourth generation K-pop. June was pretty quiet, but July saw the release of Border Hakanai, Enhypen's debut Japanese single. Now, if you've been paying attention, you will have noticed that Enhypen gets really good sales in Japan. They have for their first two albums. This did not slow that down. This thing sold 250,000 copies, earning Enhypen another #1 album in Japan, as well as their first platinum certification. The album would have the Japanese version of these singles off their debut album, as well as a new song, Forget Me Not, which was also the theme for the anime Remain, and a banger. But Forget Me Not is not our only OST to discuss. At the end of July, Enhypen would release Hey Tayo, the opening theme for the show Tayo the Little Bus. This would be followed a few weeks later with Billy Poco for the same show. And if you were wondering, I fucking hate these songs. To be fair, This is a show for like really little kids from what I understand. I haven't seen the show. I read its Wikipedia page. But it's a show for like little kids. However, you can also make music for a kid's show that's good. Like, I shake ass to the opening of Sophia the First to this day. You can make a song for a show that's for little kids that still has banger music. Sorry if I look a little flushed. I was compelled by the gods to suddenly listen to the opening of Sophia the First. And I did, of course, have to shake ass to it. I'm 26 years old. Anyway, Enhypen that September announced that they would be releasing their first full album at the end of that month. It would get pushed because like half of them got COVID, but it's fine. Also, I forgot to make a slide for this. Please pretend there's a slide here that's like an album cover of some form. I forgot to make a slide. I made like 100 slides for this. I missed one. I'm sorry. It's fine. October 12th, Enhypen released Dimension Dilemma, their first full album along with its lead single, Tamed Dashed. Let's start with album sales this time around because this thing sold really fucking well. This album would top the album charts and Enhypen's second time doing so, as well as becoming their first ever album to clear 1 million sales. It would sell 1.2 million copies by the end of 2021, making it the 9th highest selling album released that year. The album has still continued to get sales. Its current sales sit at around 1.5 million copies, as well as around 150,000 in Japan, where it also went #1 and earned a gold certification. Enough about the album. Let's talk Tame Dash, because I love this song so fucking much. However, before I rave about it, we are going to talk numbers, okay? This song would peak at number 110 on the Gaon charts and earned 3 music show wins. Roughly the same as Drunk Days to Done Domestically, maybe a little better technically, but nothing crazy. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for international numbers. Tame Dash obviously did well, but it would see a huge drop in comparison to the last Enhypen release. The song currently has around 140 million streams over on Spotify, which is a respectable number for a boy group like this to get. However, it is a lot less than their last single got, like less than half of what their last single got, and even in comparison to their debut, it's still dramatically lower. YouTube is even worse. It has 55 million views on the music video, roughly a third of what their last single got, and again, like dramatically lower than their debut. So in general, Tame Dash was like a moderate international hit. It just happened to follow up a huge one. However, I do need it known, y'all are fucking crazy for this. This song is so good. I would say that like mainline titles, aka excluding Fever, this is probably their best. If not, it's like top 2. It's fun. It's catchy. The chorus is so good. And also the looks this era were really cute. Like, it's just, I'm mad at society for not making this a bigger hit because it should have been like a real full-fledged hit. Whatever, let's talk B-sides because this is probably the most mixed thing we've seen from Enhypen so far. We do have some good songs. We have Upper Side Dreaming, where I love the chorus, and just a little bit is chill and cool. But we do also have some misses on here, mainly Blockbuster, the collaboration with Yeonjun. I'm so serious, I need this song wiped off the face of the planet. I will also concede that Attention Please is not a great song, but it is a fun song. Like, it's messy, it's campy, I enjoy it, but I would never use the word good to describe it, if that makes sense. As a whole, though, I would say the good outweighs the bad, and one big factor in that is the biggest thing to come off of this album, at least amongst the B-sides, and also my golden B-side, Go Big or Go Home. That song is amazing. It has such a good chorus. The music is phenomenal. It really is the best thing Enhypen has put out, aside from like Fever, non-title. A non-single thing that Enhypen has put out up until this point in their career. I would say I don't trust you if you don't like the song, and I don't. However, it is pretty widely agreed upon that Go Big or Go Home is the best thing on this album. This song has more than 100 million streams on Spotify. The B-side, not the follow-up single type B-side, just the B-side, has 100 million streams. For our frame of reference, the title, you may recall, only has around 140 million, so that's really good. Also, while I'm on the topic, while Go Big or Go Home is Society's golden B-side, Blockbuster is society's hated child. It is by far the least streamed song on this album, and I thank God for that every day. Or at least every day I remember that this song exists. Now, that wraps up all the lore, or at least all the lore that I want to cover for 2021. However, I do want us to quickly talk about the awards this year, because Enhypen did pretty great during this award season, specifically at the Mamas. Enhypen was up for 6 total awards that year. They won 2. They won their first Global Top 10 award, I think is what it's called, and they won Best New Male Artist, which makes sense. Like, they were the absolute shoo-in to win Best New Male Artist, because they were by far the biggest rookie from that year. Okay, that's 2021. A pretty great year, if I do say so myself. However, we'll talk about that more in the retrospective course. Okay, 2021. 2021 is really the year that I would say Enhypen became a real major player in terms of 4th generation. They weren't the biggest player, obviously. Stray Kids has pretty firmly been the biggest 4th gen boy group, and then you have to take into account girl groups. But even so, almost 4th generation, Enhypen was absolutely standing out and being really successful. Like, for a frame of reference, they had the 9th highest selling album this year. Do you understand how crazy it is that within your first 2 years, you had one of the 10 highest selling albums released that entire year? I've compiled a list, in fact. I have compiled a list of every artist since the creation of the Gaon charts who has managed to accomplish this feat. Are we ready? Here's the list, okay? 21, CN Blue, EXO, 101, Twice, and X1. With the sole exception of X1, we are talking the biggest, most impactful groups in K-pop history. Album sales aside, they also had major hits in 2021. Drunk, Dazed, and Fever were 2 of the biggest hits internationally. Fun fact, did you know Drunk Dazed was a top 40 hit in Hungary? True fact about Enhypen, they had a top 40 hit in Hungary, plus there's Fever, which was just getting fuck tons of streams. Basically, by the end of 2021, within just a year of debuting, Enhypen had managed to establish themselves as one of the biggest 4th generation artists, with their only real competition amongst boy groups being Tuxt and Stray Kids, 2 artists that were far more established than they were. But 2022 was a bit more of a complicated year for Enhypen, so let's go talk about it. Okay, 2022 time, and Enhypen did not waste any time, so neither will we. Now, HYBE had announced that Dimension Dilemma would be getting a repackage back in December of 2021, and sure enough, on January 10th, we would get Dimension Answer, their repackaged album. As one can expect, Dimension Answer sold really well. It didn't outsell Dimension Dilemma, but that's fine because repackages rarely outsell the original album, so I'm not concerned about it. Plus, it still managed to sell 800,000 copies in 2022, with current sales sitting at around 925,000, as well as earning Enhypen another #1 album on the Gaon charts. But enough about album sales, let's talk about the title track, Blessed Cursed. Now, this song did unfortunately continue the decline we'd seen with Tame Dashed. Blessed Cursed would make it to number 114 on the Gaon charts, as well as earning 2 music show wins. That is technically less than their last single did, but like, they've set a bar for themselves for Korean releases, and they haven't really strayed from it with their last few singles. International numbers are another story. Enhypen would get around 120 million streams for Blessed Cursed, making it the new holder of the least streamed Enhypen title award up until this point in time. However, while Spotify was dropping, YouTube would actually get a bit of an uptick. The music video for Blessed Cursed has around 65 million views, meaning I would argue it did around as well as Tame Dashed had done. With that said, I don't really like this song that much. To be fair, Blessed Cursed is not the worst Enhypen single. It was when it came out, but in the modern day, it's not the worst Enhypen single. It's not even really a bad song by any means. It's kind of just a boring song to me. Every time I've heard it, I've just been like, okay, here's a song. It doesn't do anything for me, I guess is my point. However, while the title track was, I guess I'd say, floundering, the new B-side that came with this album was doing numbers, which means it is now time to talk about Polaroid Love. Polaroid Love would end up going really viral over on TikTok, which led to the song being a pretty massive hit internationally, bigger than the title track of his album, and bigger than the title track off the original version of the album. Polaroid Love would end up making it to number 112 on the Gaon digital chart, higher than Blessed Cursed did actually, and is also the most successful Enhypen release in terms of the digital chart points. Most Enhypen songs pretty much just appear and drop off the charts in like 2 weeks max. This song actually had a decent charting run, granted not in the top 100, it was all in like 112 and below, but even so, the song has more than 30 million digital points on the Gaon charts, the most for any Enhypen song. However, that is nothing compared to Spotify. Polaroid Love has 330 million streams over on Spotify, making it not only one of the most streamed Enhypen songs, but making it their most streamed full-fledged B-side in the sense that it is the most streamed song to not have a music video. In short, Polaroid Love really re-propelled Enhypen back to the forefront of fourth-generation boy groups because it was one of the biggest international hits released in 2022. And they did that with a B-side, which was crazy. Like, fun fact, you ready for a fun fact? Fun fact. This song was up at the Mamas. The main line Enhypen titles Enhypen put out this year did not get nominations at the Mamas. Polaroid Love got nominated at the Mamas. I think about that often. Now, that's all the lore for Dimension Answer. However, we're not done with January, because January also saw the official release of Dark Moon, The Blood Oath. This is a web series about Enhypen. Kind of, technically speaking. I'm not gonna really get into it, because I don't care. But just know for the next several years, this is a whole thing. Like, this could get its whole own video. February, meanwhile, saw the announcement of Dimension Senku, Enhypen's second Japanese single album, which would come out on May 3rd. This album, unsurprisingly, did insanely well for Enhypen. It would sell 350,000 copies in the first week, as well as topping the charts and earning Enhypen a double platinum certification. On top of that, the album would contain a Japanese version of Tame Dashed, which would go on to go #1 on Japan's Billboard Hot 100, like the Billboard Japan Hot 100. Billboard's Japanese Hot 100, essentially. It would go #1, meaning Enhypen not only had a #1 album, they had a #1 single in Japan. However, it was not just Japan that was getting new music, and on July 4th, Enhypen would release Manifesto Day 1, their third mini-album, along with its title track, Future Perfect. And I'm so sorry, I need it known before I say anything else. This song is horrible. This song is awful. This is very possibly the worst song HYBE, as a label, has put out in the past, like, 5 years. It's horrendous. It makes me violent. I hate it with my entire heart and soul. Thankfully, it wasn't a hit. It would make it to number 108 on the Gaon charts and get 3 music show wins. Again, standard Enhypen fare, domestically speaking, and we should all be grateful. As an NCT stan, as an Ace stan, I feel like Ace is actually a better example of this. As an Ace stan, I've seen the detrimental result of when your worst single is your biggest hit, because it means that the label is going to try and replicate that sound. And when that sound sucks, it means your music now sucks. Thankfully, Future Perfect wasn't a hit. We didn't have to worry about it. Actually, we should really be thankful that streaming numbers didn't do well, because they didn't do well. The music video has 50 million views. The least viewed Enhypen music video. For our frame of reference, they have not only special songs like Let Me In or something that have more views than that, their Hey Tail music video has more views than that. Okay? This song was getting beaten out on YouTube by the Enhypen OST for a children's show. The song has around 140 million streams on Spotify, and to be fair, that is roughly as well as like their last 2 singles had done. However, the difference is there's a B-side on this album that has 130 million streams. When your B-sides are getting nearly the same number of streams as your title, that means your title flopped. We will circle back to said B-side with 130 million streams, but first we have to talk about album sales, because in spite of having the worst single ever known to man, this album did still sell really well. The album sold 1.5 million copies in its first month and closed out 2022 as the 14th best-selling album that year. However, interestingly, this is the first Enhypen release since their debut to fail to top the Gaon album charts and peaked to #2. If you were wondering what blocked it from the #1 spot, it was aespa's Girls. However, in spite of not going #1, this was still the best-selling Enhypen release in Korea up until this point, as well as earning them another #1 in Japan, where it sold 140,000 copies. However, Japanese success is normal at this point. We expect that. US success is actually new. Now, Enhypen had been doing well in the US. Their last few albums had peaked in the top 20 of the Billboard 200. This album peaked at number 6, their first top 10 album, and sold 175,000 copies in the United States, making it, to this day, their best-selling album in the US. Okay, that's enough about the album itself. Let's talk about the music. Now, I read various reviews for Enhypen's releases over their career in the making of this video. And a pretty agreed upon consensus I saw is that this is their least good album. And I would say that I agree with that. Obviously, there's a difference of opinion. Some people think that what I would consider their best album is their worst. But specifically from what I saw, from my various research, people didn't really like this album. And again, I would agree. The title track is horrifyingly bad. We've established that. But even the B-sides aren't very good. The follow-up single for this album was Paradox Invasion. And it's not a bad song, but it's not a good song. Also, you've been sitting here wondering, what was that B-side that I told you about that got 130 million streams? The answer is Shout Out. And while I do admit, Shout Out has its moments, I specifically think a concert moment with Shout Out, near the end, not your encore, but that last set before your encore, I think there specifically would be an absolute moment. And in general, it has its moments. But also, it's not this goated piece of music. I don't think it's on par with even upper level Enhypen releases. But again, it has 130 million streams. It's one of the most streamed Enhypen B-sides on Spotify, so what do I know? However, for my golden B-side, I'm giving it to the one that's left. That Feeling When, PFW. Here's my thing with this song in particular. If you took this song and compared it to other golden B-sides, both ones we've already talked about and ones we will talk about in the future, it does not hold up in comparison. However, if you compare it to the other songs on this album, it's fine. It's cute. It's good. That's the best I really got for it. Now that's all the actual lore related to the album, but we're not actually done with it yet because in promotion of Manifesto Day 1, we would get the Manifesto Tour, Enhypen's first ever tour, which began with 2 shows in Seoul that September. This tour was honestly pretty huge for what I would consider to still be a relatively new boy group. They weren't even 2 years old yet, and yet most of October was occupied by a sizable US leg with other legs in Japan, as well as shows in Bangkok and the Philippines. Also in September, though, we would get One in a Billion, Enhypen's first Dark Moon-related release. Now, the song was not a hit. It has 45 million Spotify streams, which for a lot of groups would be insane numbers to get. I'm sure Gravity would kill for a 45 million stream song. However, that is less than most Enhypen B-sides get, so it wasn't big. However, it is a good song. I like it. It ironically has one of my favorite Enhypen pre-choruses, and also I like it. Again, it's a good song. And then, ironically, just before their Japanese leg, Enhypen would release Sarame, the group's first Japanese studio album, which came out on October 26th. The album, as we can expect from Enhypen by now, did great. It would sell 275,000 copies and earn Enhypen yet another #1 album in Japan. Also, if I can take a moment, this album was primarily comprised of already released material. It would use the songs that were on their Japanese singles, and the new songs were primarily Japanese versions of their titles. However, there was one original Japanese song that was new to this album, Make a Change. How the fuck did I miss this song? This song is so good. It's a bop, it's cute. I could unironically argue that the discovery of this song by me was worth making this entire video. Anyway, as I just mentioned, Sarame would come out just before their Japanese leg, which means just after it, we have their Japanese leg. The Japanese leg would span 6 shows in 3 cities and sold insanely well. They would sell 60,000 tickets to this leg. And I know future Enhypen tours will have Japanese legs that sell well over double that, but for your first tour, to include a Japanese leg that sold 60,000 tickets is a bit insane. Now, Enhypen would spend the rest of 2022 on tour. However, I know normally I don't cover year-end stuff. I'm making an exception. I need us to take a moment and talk about the Cha Junwan Sunghoon collaboration stage, the cover of Black Swan they did at the 2022 SBS Gaio. I watch this performance concerningly often. Okay, for starters, They both look really good, but more importantly, Chajumon, the legend that he is, he walked into that room full of professional idols, trained dancers, and said to himself, what if I outdanced every single one of them? And then he did. And then he did outdance every single one of them. Insanity. We need to start pulling dancers from figure skaters more often. Just a thought. Anyway, with that, let's head back to the retrospective course. Okay, 2022. 2022 is interesting to me because 2021 was so crazy, and had it not existed, had they gone straight from 2020 levels of success with their debut to 2022, we would have considered this a really good progression, really strong progression from your debut. The problem is 2021 was so crazy that by comparison, 2022 is nothing but lackluster. With that said, they still did do really well in 2022. They sold millions of albums, had a viral hit that earned them a Mama nomination for it. Like, they were doing well. They just weren't doing as well as they'd done in 2021. It is also worth noting, though, that 2022 is when specifically Tuxt and Stray Kids, the real competition for Enhypen, started wilding with their album sales, like really and truly wilding with their album sales. And it only really highlighted Enhypen's, let's say, lesser degrees of success. But it's fine, Enhypen will catch up. And with that, on to 2023. Okay, I took a break. I had some lunch. I had a salad, if anyone was wondering. I switched my coffee out for a Red Bull. I'm ready to talk about 2023. 2023 would begin with the continuation of the Manifesto tour. Remember how I said that it was crazy their Japanese legs sold 60,000 copies? Well, in January, they performed 2 sold-out shows at the Kyocera Dome in Osaka. Those 2 shows sold 80,000 tickets. Just those 2 shows. This would be followed by some shows in Bangkok, and then to close out the tour, they performed 3 sold-out shows in the Philippines at the beginning of February. After the tour ended, Enhypen would take a well-deserved break, but they would return in May to release Dark Blood, their 4th mini-album and their first mainline release in nearly a year. And Dark Blood was another good seller. It would earn them another #1 album and sell around 1.7 million copies. Now that is a jump from their last release, but it's not as big as a jump as I would like to see. Actually, I feel like I explained that poorly. I'm trying again. So here's the thing with Dark Blood. It sold 1.7 million copies. Their last mini Manifesto Day 1 sold 1.5 million copies, meaning this album went up by around 200,000 copies. Now that is good for a lot of artists. Enhypen, however, typically goes up by around 400,000 between releases. Like, if you think about it, debut to Border Carnival to Dimension Dilemma to Manifesto Day 1. Like, they usually go up by around 300,000 to 400,000 copies per comeback. This one went up by 200,000 copies. Now again, a 200,000 copy increase from your last album is very good. However, it is not as high as I would have liked to see based off past Enhypen releases. As for international album sales, like every album before, this was a great seller in Japan. It would earn Enhypen their 5th consecutive Korean release to go #1 in Japan, as well as selling around 180,000 copies. Meanwhile, in the US, it would become the group's 2nd album to peak inside the top 10 of the Billboard 200, making it their first to peak in the top 5, where it peaked to #4 and sold around 85,000 copies. Now, let's talk about the title track, Bite Me. I want to actually start by talking about this song as a song for just a second. Now, I said this when the album came out. I said that the pre-chorus kills the title for me, and it still does to this day. I think this pre-chorus ruins the song, and my point is proven because over on YouTube, someone made a rearranged version of this song where they took the pre-chorus out and they made it the bridge, because the song, of course, does not have a bridge. It's a HYBE song in 2023. Like, this did not have a bridge, but someone took it and they made it the bridge, and it's an actual banger. Like, that pre-chorus as a bridge works, and also the chorus is so fucking good. The verses are really good. This song could have been so good, except the pre-chorus every single time ruins the song for me. It's fine. I do still enjoy the first, 45 seconds of it before that pre-chorus comes in, so there's that. I will also put in the description the rearranged version. I actually would really recommend it. If that version were released as the title track, it would have been top 3 Enhypen singles for me, frankly. It's a really good rearranging. I'll put it in the description. You should check it out. My personal enjoyment aside now, this song is actually a pretty huge hit for Enhypen. The song would become Enhypen's first ever release to peak inside the top 100 of the Gone charts. It made it as high as number 66. It didn't chart for very long, but still, like, number 66 when their other singles had peaked in the, like, 120 to 100 range. Number 66 is really good. It would also earn the group 2 music show wins, including their first ever win on M Countdown. On top of that, Bite Me saw a huge resurgence for Enhypen internationally compared to past titles, picking up 365 million streams on Spotify, making it the group's second most streamed song ever and their most streamed mainline title. Bite Me would also do great over on YouTube. The music video has 154 million views, making it their first music video in years to clear 100 million, as well as being their most viewed music video overall. In short, a huge hit for Enhypen. Enhypen is a group that really does swing back and forth between having a really big hit and then having a more moderate hit from an international stance. This was their really big hit. This was probably amongst mainline titles, since their last big hit had been Polaroid Love. Amongst mainline titles, this was probably their biggest hit in around 2 years since they released Drunk Dazed. Okay, now that that's out of the way, let's talk about the B-sides. I will concede, I like this more than Manifesto Day 1, but this is my second least favorite Enhypen album up until this point in their career. For some context, I did a review for Enhypen's debut album back in April, and in that video I said the thing that held that album back was that it was mainly made up of songs that Enhypen had done better later on in their career. However, because it was their debut, I was willing to take it because it was the first time they'd done these sounds. This album is kind of the opposite, I guess I'd say. Like, it's a lot of sounds that Enhypen has already done better in their career before this album. Like, where's Sacrifice? Sacrifice. Sacrifice to me reminds me of Fever. The difference is, while Flicker also reminded me of Fever, when Flicker came out, I didn't have Fever to go stream. I can just go stream Fever now. I don't need to listen to Sacrifice when the perfection that is Fever already exists. The main exception to me and our golden B-side for this album is going to be Bills. It's not this groundbreaking piece of music, not by any means, not even within the Enhypen catalog. However, on this album, it is what I would consider their strongest. Certainly it's my favorite, which is why it's the golden B-side. But in general, this album is a bit of a miss for me. Following promotions for Bite Me, we would get the announcement of Enhypen's next tour, but before we get into that, we need to talk about Pokemon. No, you did not mishear me. On July 12th, Enhypen released One and Only, a collaboration single with Pokemon, and a song I think about with alarming frequency. Not because it's good. It is a good song. Like, it's fun, it's cute, but that's not why I think about it all the time. I think about it all the time because when I was at my Enhypen concert, they performed the song, and they brought out a bunch of people in giant Pikachu outfits that just danced around with the members. It was actually really cute. It was one of my favorite stages of the night, and I think about it very often. July would also see the release of Criminal Love, Enhypen's second Dark Moon related single, and a song that, how do I want to put this? I have a deep and concerning psychological obsession with. I will say, I've been listening to this song consistently now for around 2 years since it came out, and I still don't quite get why I'm so obsessed with it. Like, I do think this is a good song. It's dark, and it's sexy, and it has good music. Like, it's a good song, but it does not warrant the deep obsession that I have with it. It was also, I guess I'd say, a moderate hit. It has around 75 million streams over on Spotify, which for most groups would be a really strong number to get. However, for Enhypen, obviously their titles have consistently been clearing 100 million, so do with this information what you wish. But you may recall, I said Enhypen had a tour to do, and sure enough, at the end of July, they launched their Fate tour with 2 sold-out shows in Seoul. This was followed by a minor Japanese leg, which notably saw Enhypen performing at the Tokyo Dome, becoming the first ever 4th-generation boy group to hold a concert at the venue. This minor Japanese leg was also perfectly aligned with the release of You, Enhypen's 3rd Japanese single album. And even by, like, Enhypen standards in Japan, this thing went crazy. It would sell 400,000 copies in the first week and earn Enhypen a double platinum certification. The only downside of it is it peaked at number 2. However, I, for one, am willing to take 400,000 copies on number 2 any day. Following their Japanese shows, Enhypen would head over to the US to do some shows over here, which was where they spent most of October, closing out the 2023 round of concerts with a show in Chicago, but worry not, we will get more shows in 2024. And why did we need to take a break up from touring? Well, that's because in November, we got Orange Blood, the group's 5th mini-album along with its lead single, Sweet Venom. And this album was an insane seller, okay? In addition to earning Enhypen another #1 album, which is impressive but also kind of expected for the group, it would become the group's first ever release to sell 2 million copies. Current sales sit around 2.3 million, with it closing out 2023 as the 13th highest selling album for that entire year. Also, as expected, it did well internationally. It would earn them another #1 album in Japan, where it became their first Korean release to sell over 200,000 copies. Meanwhile, in the US, it would tie their last release for their highest appearance on the Billboard 200, again, making it to #4 and selling around 90,000 copies in the US. Now for the title track, and in spite of this album being a monster of a seller, and their last single being a monster of a hit, Sweet Venom did see our pendulum swing right back over to being a flop. By which I mean it peaked to #120 on the Gaon charts, their lowest peaking single in years, as well as only landing the group one music show win. Now, I know Enhypen is not a big player on music shows. Their most awarded songs have 3 wins in total, but 1 win from 3 wins is a draw. Streaming numbers were not much better. Over on Spotify, it has 150 million streams, which is not bad. It is better than most of what I would consider the floppish or Enhypen releases. However, that is less than half of what their last single got. Same thing with YouTube. The song has 75 million views on the music video, which, again, even for Enhypen is good. But their last music video had over 150 million. This is less than half of what the last one got. Basically, had Sweet Venom come out after almost any other Enhypen release, it would have been an improvement. It would have been good progress. It just happened to come out after their biggest hit in years, if not ever. And frankly, I don't get it. Sweet Venom is so good. It's cool, and it's sort of funky, and it's insanely catchy. Like, I think about this chorus all the time. Like, the only Enhypen mainline title, aka Not Fever, that I would consider stronger than Sweet Venom is Tame Dashed, and even then, like, it's close. I could be convinced that this is better. But not only is the title good, the B-sides are also good. I know we've established that I have not been the biggest fan of the last few Enhypen albums. This is not that. This album is actually quite good. Blind stays low-key, but still hits perfectly with an amazing chorus. And Orange Flower is, I would say, the cutest thing on here. It mainly just gets me in ways I can't explain, but I do really like it. However, my personal golden B-side is gonna go to Still Monster. That song, that chorus, don't even get me started, okay? I really do mean it when I say I think that Still Monster is their strongest B-side since Go Big or Go Home. However, promotions for Sweet Venom would take us to normal year-end stuff, which would then take us to the end of the year. So with that, we're done with 2023. We're going back to the retrospective course. Now, 2023 was complicated, to say the least. I feel like, I know I've said this before in the video, but I am going to repeat it. Enhypen is very much a pendulum group, where it seems like every album has its massive hit, and then their follow-up single will always be a disappointment. Right, like, we started the year with a massive hit with Bite Me, the biggest thing Enhypen had put out in over a year, and then they followed that up with Sweet Venom, their least successful single in years. However, for what it's worth, Enhypen's strong suit has always been their album sales, and they did do really fucking well when it came to album sales. In just this year alone, they sold more than 4 million albums in Korea, a crazy number. However, if you want to talk crazy album sales, we need to talk about 2024, so let's go do that. Okay, 2024 time, our final full year to discuss. And we begin with the iconic, the classic, the release of I Need You. Now, anyone who knows basic K-pop lore, and maybe not Enhypen lore, is probably confused. You're probably sitting there being like, wait a minute, I thought that I Need You was a BTS song, and you're right. Good job, you may have a treat. You are correct. However, on February 16th, Enhypen would release their own version of the song for Spotify. And yes, I do mean for Spotify. I will say Spotify has like 3 things over Apple Music, and that's it. And one of the 3 is the presence of this song exclusively on Spotify. I love this song. I love this cover so much. I want to stream it all the time, and I can't because I am an Apple Music early, because Apple Music is superior, don't get me wrong. But like, this is so good. It's so cool. They switched up the music. It's so good. I think about it all the time. We're not done with the Enhypen covers though, because a week later we would get their cover of What Makes You Beautiful by One Direction. Actually, fun fact, I remember at the time that this came out, I like just said something to the bestie, or like just had a thought where I was like, we need to incorporate One Direction in K-pop more. Granted, in my mind when I said that, I meant more in like a Voice Planet sense, like we should be having like a special stage at the Gaios where they do like Live While We're Young. This is not what I meant, but this is a welcome interpretation. At least it would be if I didn't hate this cover. Here's the thing. With the I Need You cover, they switched up the music. They made it more R&B. It was distinct from the Bangtan version. This is a straight up cover, with the only difference being that they cut out the second verse, and that's it. Like, it's not a good use of buying the rights to a song if you're gonna release a straight up cover, in my mind. Like, you could have done something to make it your own. Okay, enough about fun covers. I need to talk about that mess that is the Fate Plus tour. Now, you may recall the Fate tour began in July of 2023 in promotion of their Dark Blood album. It was originally meant to wrap up in January with the end of their Asian leg. Keyword being originally, because as a sort of follow-up to the Fate tour, we would get the Fate Plus tour. It is technically an extension of the Fate tour, but it is in many ways its own world tour. Also, this wasn't like a normal tour where like most of the dates get announced in one lump sum. They were just kind of constantly announcing dates for this thing, but either way, it would begin in February with 3 shows in Seoul. After that, they would head over to the US, where they did an entire leg here in April. I also did notably go to the US leg. I specifically went to their Tacoma concert. I did also make an entire video in relation to that experience, I'll call it. It was one of the worst concert experiences I've ever had. Not by Enhypen standards by any means. They were fine. They were frankly unrelated to why it was a concert from hell. I will say, I like haven't made a... I'll put the video in the description, mind you. It was terrible. Like, all of it was bad. But it is worth noting, I've since been to many a K-pop concert at the Tacoma Dome. I went to Tux there, I went to AT's there, I went to Giddle there. I've been there since, and every other time has gone much smoother. But it is worth noting, my Enhypen experience was not ideal, to say the least. Anyway, the US leg of Fate Plus would run until early May, just in time for us to get memorabilia on May 13th. Also, to be clear before I actually talk about it, I do not consider this a mainline Enhypen release. Yes, it got a physical album component to it, but even so, this was for the Dark Moon series, right? Like, this wasn't an actual Enhypen comeback. It will therefore not be getting the same level of focus as in other Enhypen releases in this video. It did also sell much less. Its current sales sit around 270,000 copies. It also peaked at number 3 on both the Gaon and Japanese charts, which, fun fact, makes this album and their debut album the only albums by Enhypen to fail to top the charts in Japan. That said, I do actually really like this album. I think it's good. For starters, it has the previously released Dark Moon singles on it, mainly Criminal Love, which we know I adore. So like, there is that, but also the new songs on this thing are pretty good too. Fatal Trouble, the lead single, I guess, off this album, is dark and sexy, and I like it. Teeth has this sort of psychedelic rock energy to it, and I am kind of obsessed with it. And then there's Scream, which is just chill pop perfection. Like, it's so good. Also, don't quote me on this, I'm like 99% sure this album is the first appearance of Enhypen unit songs. For those who don't know this about me, I am a slut for a good unit song. I just love when we take an existing group that already makes music and then we give me weird combinations within that group. I don't care if you have 4 members. Like, I'd be down for a weird duo song. Like, give me unique pairings of members. Make them make their own songs. It's interesting to me. More K-pop groups frankly need to do it. Also, I just think this is funny. Right after this album came out, literally the day after, Enhypen announced another album. Like, they announced they'd be releasing an album that summer, and I interpreted this, both at the time and the modern day, as the sort of like, don't worry, this is not our mainline release for the year. The big, real album is coming. And come the big release did, when on July 12th, we got Romance Untold, Enhypen's second studio album, along with its lead single, EXO. And we're actually going to start with the title because I fucking hate this title. I hate this song so bad. It's so bland and it's so boring. And to go from the absolute like banger that was Sweet Venom to this is frankly a disservice to the human race. Thankfully, it wasn't that big of a hit. It did do kind of well. Like, it peaked at number 90 on the Gaon charts, their second ever top 100 appearance, so good for them. But it still only got them one music show win, which again, is not super ideal, even though Enhypen was never a big winner on music shows. But you know what really wasn't ideal? The international numbers. This song has 120 million Spotify streams, which I know. That's a really good number for like 90% of K-pop artists, but for Enhypen, that makes it their least streamed single up until this point in their careers. YouTube was not much better. The music video for the song has around 50 million views. It has 48 million to be exact, but around 50 million we'll call it, meaning it dropped 25 million from their last song and around 100 million from the song before that. In short, this song kind of flopped and it deserved it. It deserved all of it. It's boring, it's bad, and I hate it. However, while the title track was being arguably Enhypen's biggest failure, the album itself was becoming their biggest success. Just right off the bat, the song would spend 3 weeks at number 1 on the Gaon charts, becoming the first ever Enhypen album to have a multiple week run at number 1, but even then, that is nothing compared to the sales this thing got. Romance Untold would close 2024 as the 4th highest selling album. Specifically, the main version would be the 4th highest selling album. That version would sell 2.4 million copies, but that does not include other versions. The Weavers version on its own sold 500,000, and cumulatively all the versions came out to around 3 million copies sold. And then there's Japanese numbers. Now, we've established Enhypen is a very strong seller in Japan. And yet, this thing sold 300,000 copies in Japan. An insane jump from their last album, which sold around 200,000. Meanwhile, in the US, this album would sell 120,000 copies, but more impressively, would peak at number 2 on the Billboard 200, only being held from the top spot by The Death of Slim Shady, the brand new Eminem album. And when you're number 2 to Eminem, that's really not that bad. In short, a monstrosity of a seller. And if we just looked at this comeback in terms of album sales, it would be far and away the most successful thing Enhypen has ever put out. Okay, enough about the success of the album, or lack thereof of the single. Let's talk about the actual music on this album. And unfortunately, while I did really like their Orange Blood album and their Memorabilia album, I am not the biggest fan of Romance Untold. This album does have its moments. Moonstruck marks our first Enhypen opener on a mainline release to not be a spoken word intro, and it's really fucking good. It's really cool. I really like it. There's also, where is it? Royalty. Royalty has its moments for sure. And Your Eyes Only, I do vibe existentially to her. However, for the most part, the other songs on here, they're not bad. Like, there's not a bad song on this album. They're just mostly kind of there. They remind me of the title. They're boring, and they're bland, and they're skips. Like, had this been a 5-song mini with a different title, we keep Moonstruck as the opener even, but like, you pick the 5 best songs on here, you would have had a much better album to me. However, there's one shining light on this album, my golden B-side, which is, of course, Brought the Heat Back. This song is dance pop perfection, really and without a doubt. It's so fun, and it's so catchy, and it's such a banger. Like, this is the best Enhypen B-side we've had in years. Then, following promotions for EXO, Enhypen was back on tour before finally, at long last, ending the Fate Plus tour on September 1st with a show in Japan. And a month later, Enhypen launched their next tour. I'm dead serious, actually. Enhypen would launch the Walk the Line tour that October. Like, I get it, but this is why we shouldn't have had the Fate Plus tour. Like, I'm dead serious, the Fate Plus tour should not have existed. Anyway, the Seoul shows were followed by some shows in Japan. However, they did not spend long there. They had to get home to release their next album. Yeah, on November 11th, Enhypen released Romance Untold Daydream, a repackaged version of their second fall. The album, of course, was a strong seller. Again, it did not outsell Romance Untold, but again, repackages rarely do. It is very uncommon for a repackage to outsell the original album, so while this didn't do that, it did still sell really well. Like, this album still went #1, it still sold 1.5 million copies in Korea, and earned another #1 and 200,000 in sales in Japan. Like, this was a good seller, it just also happened to be around half of what their last album had sold. As for the title track, the album was led by the single No Doubt, which did fine domestically speaking. It would earn 0 music show wins, the first Enhypen single since their debut to fail to get a single win. However, it is also their highest speaking song on the Gallup charts, where it made it to #55. So like, it kind of balances out. Internationally, however, definitely a flop. This music video has 50 million views, which again, on par with their last single. However, Spotify, that's another story. Spotify, this became the first ever Enhypen single to fail to clear 100 million streams. Currently sitting at around 70 million. I know someone's sitting out there, someone like me, who's like a Nugu stan, and is screaming at their computer or their TV or their phone being like, 70 million streams is good. And it is. The entire Gravity discography, for a frame of reference, has around 120 million. So for your one song to have 70 million is really good. However, for Enhypen, this is by far their least streamed title track. And personally, like, my point of view as a song, I'm not gonna say like it's crazy, like, it's not a groundbreaking piece of music. I'm not saying No Doubt is amazing. However, it's just like a dumb, mindless pop song. And after EXO, which as we've established is awful, this is a very welcome shift. I do kind of wish it had done better. As for the B-sides, this album contained exactly one new B-side, which was Daydream. Now, you might think, oh, Daydream must be our golden B-side, then wrong. You're wrong. I hate Daydream. I hate Daydream so much. The whispering actively pisses me off. This album doesn't get a golden B-side. It gets no golden B-side. There is no golden B-side. Anyway, closing out the year, Enhypen would just go back on tour. They went back to Japan to perform there for their Walk the Line tour, which does wrap up 2024, but we're once again going to take a brief pause to talk about the Mamas. Enhypen was up for a ton of Mamas that year, including all 3 of their songs, Best Male Group, Best Dance Performance by a Male Group. They didn't win any major awards, but even so, being nominated that much made them one of the most nominated artists at that year's ceremony. And that's it for 2024. So for the final time in this video, we will be heading back to the retrospective corner. Okay, 2024. A really interesting year in the sense that I could with ease call it Enhypen's best year and also their worst year. Let's start negative. Their 2024 singles were absolutely a disappointment. 2024 is the first year we saw where that pendulum didn't swing back. Enhypen did not get a hit single in 2024. I know some of you may be thinking, wait a minute, you just said they were up for Song of the Year and Best Dance Performance by a Male Group at the Mamas. They're song nominations. And you're right. They were up for that with Sweet Venom, a song from 2023. However, while Enhypen's singles were floundering, their sales shot through the roof. Across their releases this year, they sold more than 5 million albums, one of the most for any artist of 2024, and again, had the 4th highest selling album release that year, only being beaten out by 17 and Stray Kids. And then there's the touring. This is another thing I really could spin as positive or negative, depending on what mood I'm in. Like, we're gonna start negative, okay? Enhypen's touring in 2024 was a hot mess. The Fate Plus tour was so disjointed, so chaotic. They did not announce dates consistently. It was not well done. It was bad. And then to top it all off, they only took a month off between tours. Not even like, oh, this was the month their album came out, and then they launched the next tour in support of the album. No. They just had a month off, and then immediately launched the next tour. And well, yes, that does suck for Enhypen that they didn't really get a break. Their concerts were selling really well. Like, I went to 4 shows of the Tacoma Dome. I do that every time. The Tacoma Dome last year. I went to Enhypen, Tux, ATEEZ, Gittle. 4 of the biggest 4th generation artists, right? And the fullest I saw it was for Enhypen. The girls were showing up for Enhypen. In short, 2024 was a mess. They did really well and they did really poorly, and with that on to 2025. Okay, welcome to 2025, the current year. And while we don't have a ton of things to discuss, we don't have nothing. And we begin the year with some lore that does indeed feel like an absolute fever dream, which was the release of Confessions, a song by Flo Rida of like Whistle, Low, Right Round, that man. The wildly successful Flo Rida. He released the song Confessions featuring Heesung and Jake. Now, we have long since passed successful Flo Rida era. Like, that man has not had a hit probably in around 10 years if I had to guess. I'm not looking. That man, he's not successful anymore. This song definitely flopped. It has under 20 million streams on Spotify. However, just the mere existence that Flo Rida has a song with Heesung and Jake from Enhypen is crazy to me. January would also see Enhypen wrapping up their very spread out Japanese leg for the Walk the Line tour with 2 final sold out shows at the Kyocera. Things would be a bit quiet after that, so we're going to jump ahead to April 4th when Enhypen would release Loose, a digital single. Now to be clear, Loose to me, A, is not a mainline Enhypen release, and also again, it's a digital single. So like, I'm not surprised they didn't do well. Enhypen's strength has always been their album sales, and as a digital single, that takes that out of the way. Meanwhile, Spotify streams are also not going to be as strong because it's not a mainline release. That said, it is a good song. It's chill, it's kind of sexy. In my mind, when I first heard it, and again when I listened to it and took these notes, my brain was like, hear me out. It's like a weird mix of like Michael Jackson meets 1999 by Mark Lee. I know I sound deranged when I say that. I promise you I am correct. This was then followed that same month by a far more important piece of lore, which was Enhypen's performance at Coachella. And can I be honest for like 3 seconds? I was so convinced they'd already performed at Coachella. This entire Coachella season, I was seeing so many tweets about Enhypen being at Coachella, and every single time I was like, weren't they just there last year? No, they were not there last year. This was their first time at Coachella, unless the entire world has decided to lie to me. So, they were there, and more importantly though, at Coachella, on weekend 2, after their set, they announced that they would be releasing a new album that June. Specifically, today, June 5th, if I time this right. Today, as of date posting, mind you, I'm obviously not filming this on June 5th. But yeah, if I time this right, today Enhypen released Desire Unleashed, their latest mini album. Now obviously, this is happening in real time. If I time this right, this album came out like 2 hours ago, so like hopefully I timed it right. But either way, this album did come out. I'm assuming it's gonna sell really fucking well based off everything else Enhypen has done. Also, this is my prediction. This is my prediction for the title. Are we ready? Simon's prediction on what is today. On May 18th, 2025. This is my prediction on what this song's gonna do. Ready? I think the song's gonna be their next hit. I think it's gonna do really well on Spotify, really well on streaming, maybe get a music show win, not more than 2. That's my guess. My guess is it's gonna be their hit. Musically itself, I have no fucking idea. We have hit literally every single type of song from Enhypen over their last like 5 releases, from the worst song you've ever heard to like one of their best, to their most boring, to generic pop song. So I don't know what the song's gonna sound like. My guess is that it's gonna be a hit. However, only time will tell, so until then, let's look to the future real quick. Enhypen is currently set to spend much of the summer touring. They're supposed to come here back to the US in August. They aren't coming to Seattle, which is a bit disappointing. I would go back. Like, my hellish experience aside, I would like to see them again. I did have a good time. So, they're not coming here. They are going to be on tour in August. This is going to be followed by their first ever European leg. They've never had concerts in Europe before, so that's fun. They're currently set to end the Walk the Line tour in September in Paris. However, based off the Fate and Fate Plus tour existence, don't get your hopes up. However, that is all I have for you, which means this has officially been the history of Enhypen. And thank you so much for watching. Yeah, I do actually think it's kind of funny that after my mammoth of an EXO video, I was like, I need something easy, I need something quick, and Enhypen does like 2 albums a year, they're gonna be easy to talk about. I wrote 30 pages of notes. 30 pages of notes for this video. I'm deranged. I need psychological help, but I also do like making these, so I'm not gonna lie. Like, I did have fun making this. Sometimes I forget how fun it is to do a group that I don't really know that well. I had a great time. I learned so much about Enhypen. Final thoughts are, I do stand by, they are the 3rd of the big 3 of 4th generation boy groups. I think the main thing that my brain kept being like, no they're not, is their pendulum experience. The fact that every single Enhypen release seems to go back and forth between being an absolutely massive hit or an absolutely massive flop is a bit disjointing. Like, casual reminder, they have 1 song. Their debut song is their only song with 200-ish million streams, Everything else is either in the hundreds or like the 300s. And I think that's so interesting. I think it's so fascinating. But whatever. Maybe that'll be a topic for another video. Until then, thank you so much for watching. Feel free to comment your thoughts down below. Don't tell me that I skipped something. I'm so fucking serious. Don't you dare tell me that I skipped something. I'll be mad. I'll be actively pissed. Other than that, like and subscribe if you want to or don't. I will be fine either way. In the description, I'm going to put a couple things, okay? Smoky Glow channel, evolution of playlist, the remix, or I guess rearranged version of Bite Me will be down there. Anything else I promised in this video will be down there. I think it was just those things. Other than that, I will put all my Enhypen reviews. I have done a lot of Enhypen reviews. I've now realized, like I was looking at it the other day, I have done a lot of them. But they'll all be down there if you want to watch them. I will also put down there a playlist that has all of my other history ofs. Be wary. The last one is my EXO one, and it's 4 hours and 45 minutes long. So it's a time commitment. I say like this one isn't also a time commitment. Whatever. It'll be down there if you want to watch it. And yeah, thank you again for watching. Bye!